It's time for Remodel Revolution. And now, an award-winning contractor with over 40 years experience. Here is Alex Guthrie.
Welcome to another episode of Remodel Revolution. I'm your host, Alex Guthrie. This is the show that has no sports, no politics, and no mean people. Welcome to another episode. We are coming to you live from the world headquarters of Remodel Revolution from deep in the heart of the great state of Texas. We're so happy to be here. We're so happy you're here with us. Thank you for watching the show today. We have a great show today. I have I've been trying to do a security show forever, and I finally found the right person. Jimmy Smith with Dallas Security is going to be with us. And we are going to discuss your security in your home, how to, where's your vulnerable spots? What is the new technologies? How is the new technology affecting your ability to let people that maybe have a fever, maybe it can read them coming in, who knows? There's all kinds of questions. This might take a while. But first, I wanted to talk about a phone call I got this week that was, I thought, quite interesting and kind of telling about how technology is affecting the way we shop these days. I got a phone call from a nice man, very nice man from out of state that is working, having some work done on his parents' home here locally in the DFW area. And he wanted me to meet him at his house and look at the outside of the house. I wanted to do the trim, redo the trim on the outside of the house. And one interesting part of it is while we were talking, I asked him for the address and I Googled it on my computer, and I was actually looking at the outside of the house while we were discussing the project he wanted to do. And I really liked him. I thought he was very nice, and he was doing this because his parents are elderly and they need work done on their home, and he's coming down to help to handle it for them. And so I thought that was really a nice thing to do. And I immediately liked him because I have an elderly mom and I get that. And so when I'm talking to people, I'm interviewing them as well. They're interviewing me, I'm interviewing them, because we're not all a good fit. And so you have to ask people questions. One of the things that I knew when I was talking to him and looking at the picture is I had a basic understanding of what was going to have to be done to accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. So as I'm looking at the video or the picture of the house online, I can tell that to do the work that he wants done, there was going to have to be, for instance, scaffolding put up in front of the house to do the work. That the wood replacement was going to be on some very tall peaks on real tall gables on the house. So it was going to be a little complex as far as that goes. Also, when you're replacing that wood trim, you have to take into account things like it's going to have to be painted, that there's going to be other things. This is rotted trim, so there's going to be other things behind it that are rotted. The job's going to grow a little bit. Also, there's landscaping around the house that's going to have to be dealt with if you have scaffolding. It's a very complex project. It sounds simple when you put it down to one line, like we're replacing the trim on the house, but when you start looking at the actual project, it's fairly complex. So I went through this whole process with this nice man, and then I get to the end of my conversation with him, and I ask him, like all contractors should always ask, so if you're a contractor watching, you may already know this, but if you don't, you'll learn it eventually the hard way. How many bids are you taking? How many people are you calling? And this man says to me, I'm at 6 now with this call to you. I'm at 6, but I'm thinking 10 or 12. And of course, my reaction to that was, it's been really nice talking to you. I'm not interested. And he's like, well, why not? And I said, because you're wasting 5 people's time or maybe 10 people's time. And you don't seem to really care about that. So I don't think I don't think we're going to work well together. He didn't quite understand it, but he was very graceful, and he said fine, and we hung up. My point with this is that we're at this point where you can now get a referral service. You can go on the Better Business Bureau. There's all kinds of ways to shop smart and not waste a lot of people's time and not waste your time. If you take more than 2 or 3 bids on a project you're doing on your house, then you are going to get so confused about who's doing what, why, and why does a certain thing cost more from one person to the next. I have people that try and take different elements from different bids and put them all together in one little package that makes them feel good, and then try and get me to work for that little package. But for different contractors, there's different reasons that things cost what they cost. And so there's a lot of variables in one of these projects. They're not as simple as they sound. So when you're shopping and you're asking people to give you quotes, be respectful of their time and their experience. I knew what this was going to take because I've done this my entire life. And I knew immediately when I looked at the picture of the house exactly what it would entail. That comes from experience. That is not free. I've given it away plenty by accident, and most of us, learn that lesson eventually. So be careful when you're shopping. If you're taking 10 or 12 quotes, you're really making yourself confused and you're wasting other people's time. So enough of that. If we get to it later in the show, we're going to talk about some smart online shopping tips anyway. But first, I want to introduce my guest today, Jimmy Smith with Dallas Security Systems. Dallas Security Systems has been in business for almost 50 years in Dallas. They're a local company, locally owned. They are locally operated. All of their monitoring is done in-house. They're really a solid, incredible company that does a large commercial and residential security business. So welcome to the show, Jimmy.
Thank you for having me, Alex. I appreciate the time.
I'm really glad you're able to make time for us today, because I've been, with all of the uprising and all of the things going on in society right now, excuse me, I felt like it was time for us to have a security discussion in the home, because when they're kicking gates down, going into private neighborhoods, and there just doesn't seem to be any limit to what people are willing to do, and it's kind of scary as a homeowner.
It can be, and if I may direct it back, what we're finding out through a lot of inquiries are people wanting to extend their security beyond an alarm system to camera systems. Mm-hmm. And they want to be able to view those cameras remotely on their phone, which is something that they can obviously do. And they want to be able to share that information if something occurs on their property or even near their property or even to the entrance of their community with their neighbors. And
the interesting thing is, like we were talking about earlier, is this website called Nextdoor, which
yes.
a lot of us are on. It must be huge.
Yes.
It seems like every neighborhood in the world has a Nextdoor. I call it the internet Mrs. Kravitz, for you older folks.
That's
like
perfect.
Me,
That's perfect. Yeah.
that remember Mrs. Kravitz. She was the Gabby neighbor that was nosy. She was in everyone's. What was that show? What was she? Oh, she was on Bewitched. Mrs. Kravitz. I think that's the right show. Right. Anyway, she was the nosy neighbor, and that's how I view Nextdoor. But Nextdoor is really interesting because now that we all have these Ring doorbells, we have security cameras, there are cameras everywhere. You get almost real-time stuff on video on websites like that.
Well, the purpose of hopefully deterring crime or theft or burglaries in a neighborhood, I mean, just last night, a lady in our neighborhood lost her cat. She went on next door, and a lady noticed through the Ring doorbell a cat was at her front door. So she immediately put that video on next door, and she claimed her cat back within an hour.
I bet we get 20 kitty things a week on next door.
So that's kind of where we're at. But the market and where we've seen it with all the people wanting to be quarantined and staying in the house, they're using apps like, of course, all the other social media apps. But Nextdoor has really been able to open people's eyes up and see their neighbors, literally. And I've noticed that during the evening time when the sun kind of sets, we see a lot more people walking around our neighborhood. When me and my wife take the stroll around, we see a lot more people we wave to we've never seen before. And so that might be one of the good sides of it. We're starting to, if you know your neighbor, get to know your people around you, that's the forefront of making yourself a little bit more safer in your community.
Well, it's interesting phenomenon because the internet is a very, has a lot of tentacles. It's a very complex thing. It's become that way anyway. The way it's affecting how all of us live and communicate. The Nextdoor app, I think, is fantastic. I love it. I think it's fun because you can sell grandma's rocking chair on it, or give it, or help somebody if somebody needs help moving a piece of furniture. They'll come on and ask you. And this idea that they can also post little videos of someone walking in my neighborhood. Some kids were walking down the street and they were getting in people's mailboxes and kind of being, little vandals. They were seen on 2 or 3 Nextdoor cameras, and I'm not sure if they caught them, but you're not getting away with this stuff anymore. It doesn't matter if it's 3 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
You're there. So cameras and security have become huge. And when I'm in houses now where every corner of the outside of the house, and this show today we're going to focus on the outside of the house. There's a camera in every corner. You literally can see anybody anywhere. The raccoons on the roof, if that's what you want.
Sure.
And is wireless technology helping this, or do you do those wirelessly?
If it's done right. And I don't even need to name names, but if you're actually, let's go from the security alarm issue first. The technology is at 900 megahertz. So if you're doing an alarm, if you're shopping around for a security system, the only thing you need to ask someone you're calling, any company you're asking, ask them, what frequency does my door sensor communicate to the panel?
What does that mean?
900 megahertz is a very powerful signal. Not a lot of items are on that frequency band. The FCC has not put very many. It's what our cell phones were back in the 90s. A garage door opener can actually toy with a 433 megahertz alarm system.
So it can pick the signal up.
Yeah, and again, it can cause a false alarm. If someone has a security system in the 400 megahertz range, it can actually be tripped by a garage door opener.
Very interesting.
So
very interesting.
That's one of the things you got to be careful with. But the cameras, getting back to the outside, it's always been a two-facet thing with alarm systems. For me, home security has been 2 things: when I'm home and when I'm away from my house. When I'm home, I'll take care of things my own way. Everybody has their own personal choice how they're going to defend their home and family. You have your way.
So because you kind of have 2 different things that you're talking about. You're talking about keeping them out, and then you're talking about if they get in. So right. you have a somewhat either a barrier or a security, an alarm or something to hopefully keep them out.
Right.
But then you have the worst case is they're actually in, and then you're at the defensive stage of your.
And that's not necessarily the direction I want to go to, because that's really
right.
for
Right. That's
people.
Someone else. But
yeah.
So because what we were talking about today is actually the keeping them out part. You know, the what I call the barrier on the outside of the house.
But let me jump into something real quick and just ask you this quick question, see if you get it right. what do you think the first thing they take nowadays? If they broke into your home while you're gone, what's the first thing you think someone would want to take? I'm probably going to give a good tip here.
Okay.
What do you think?
Oh,
Take a guess. If someone,
I assume it would be a TV or
prescription medication.
Is that right?
So if anybody out there is handicapped of age, or they are advertising in their car in the driveway that they have a handicap sticker, simply take that down. Don't let people know that you may have some sort of opioids in the house.
So it's drugs. It's drug
Prescription
driven.
medication is one of the bigger things that I'm seeing out in the field.
That is amazing.
So to prevent that from being a problem, so if you come home and
Don't
find out,
advertise it.
well, don't advertise it. Take a couple extra pills. Ask your doctor to overorder for four or five pills that you take on a daily basis and hide them somewhere. That way, if you are taking, someone does break in and someone does take your medication, and I'm mainly talking to the older people, you have 4 or 5 pills to get you through the next cycle when the doctor can rewrite and overwrite a prescription using that police report.
That is fascinating. That's fascinating. Of course, we always would, of course, like I said, I would think it'd be a TV or a gun or
Those are at
something
Walmart
like
for
that.
$200. I don't think they need
No,
to.
and you can't get arrested now if it's under a certain amount. So you just
Exactly.
go grab your TV and go home.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not advocating that, incidentally.
But when we talk about home and away, I'm away from the house. You're not away from the home anymore because you have your cell phone. I got mine right here. If I can pull it up, I can see anything I want
Anywhere in the world.
that I can grab internet or cellular
Well, it's
communication.
very interesting because I just, and I've referred to this client a few times in the last few months, but there were so many interesting aspects to this project. They lived in Hong Kong, and the house was unoccupied, and I remodeled the house. And so he would, if I couldn't get back by to set the alarm, I would just send him a text and say, would you set the alarm? And he did from Hong Kong. He said, no problem. Or I'd send him a text and say, would you, I forgot the, I forgot the alarm. No, that didn't happen, but they could let people in and out remotely.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. You could do things like even open and close the garage door remotely from anywhere in the world. It was fascinating.
It's there.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about barriers and vulnerable places that thieves can get into your house from the outside. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
The hardest working and arguably most important system in our homes is our air conditioning and heating system. It heats the air, it cools the air, and it filters the air. That's why it's so critical to have it checked and maintained by the very best professionals available. It's time to contact Total Air and Heat at totalair.com. Get that system pruned and tuned. If you want to have the very best experience, you've got to hire the very best company. Total Air's employees are honest, well-trained, and thoroughly background checked. I never have to worry about sending their technicians out to my clients' homes. Family owned and operated for 3 generations, Total Air and Heat has been a fixture in North Dallas for over 60 years. Total Air is a proud dealer of the Trane air conditioning systems, and you know how hard it is to stop a Trane, so give them a call at 972-881-0020. That's 972-881-0020, or contact them at totalair.com today.
I've been worried about our security and our safety in our homes because we've had a whole lot of uprisings and a lot of violence in our streets. And a lot of us feel very vulnerable. It's interesting that they've had the highest number of gun sales and people trying to register guns, I think, ever in the last few months. And that's because we're feeling vulnerable. And one of the first lines of defense is a good security system. And I invited Jimmy Smith with Dallas Security Systems to come and kind of educate us and talk about some of these systems. It's been a fascinating discussion so far. Jimmy, what is the most vulnerable place a thief would first try and get into a house? Where do they go first?
Back door.
The back door.
Back door. And if you have an alley, they generally will just hop over the fence and make themselves in. And the door entry is, people want to secure the windows and they just push the door in.
Yeah.
And they can do that relatively easy. And then they're going straight towards the master bedroom, bathroom, in my opinion, where they're going to get the stuff.
And so in our earlier discussion before we went on break, you talked about that the first thing they go for inside the house is the drugs.
Yeah. That's what I'm seeing right now. It's just because of the opioid issue.
Right. So what do you do? How do you store that? What's the best advice you can give me for where I store this stuff that I don't want people to steal?
Well, let's go back to the looting you were talking about. We see this on TV. One store or one location they generally will not go into is a Walgreens or CVS because there's a safe in there.
And that's where they keep the opioids.
That's where they keep the important medication that they need to store up at night. And the first thing you ought to get, other than an alarm system, of course, is a safe, a gun safe. Now, if you don't want to own a gun, that's your right not to own a gun. It's your right to own a gun. But for me, if I have a gun safe in my home, I put my most valuable, precious things in that safe. Mm-hmm. If they penetrate my house, they're not going to get in that gun safe. Period.
Well,
now those extra items, extra pills to get me past if I got mine taken from me, they're in that gun safe.
And so your advice was to, and I thought it was very, very smart advice, is to have your doctor prescribe enough medications for you that you can actually store some. You don't have to have in front of you. Like maybe you take your little pill thing and you put a week's worth in there, and then you put the rest of them in the safe where they're safe.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Just do it like that. That way, if lottery odds, but everybody plays lottery, you get broken into while you're gone. They take your medication. You have an ample supply to get by, so your prescriptions can be refilled. And I'm seeing this on a day-to-day basis, literally.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we touched briefly on wireless technology. I'm fascinated by wireless technology because it's actually sort of integrated itself into all of our life. Even if you're in your vehicle and you've got your phone plugged in like I do, to listen to maybe Pandora or maybe Sirius or whatever. A lot of that technology is actually being broadcast from phone to radio wirelessly. It seems like everywhere we are now, it's wireless, and which is essentially what it means is there's a little radio wave going out and it's all talking to each other and playing the station or whatever. And I was fascinated with the way security companies have started putting window sensors, glass break sensors, different types of sensors in houses, and they can do it wirelessly now. And you're saying that there's a certain megahertz or certain strength or certain type of signal or strength of signal that people should ask for. Does that go with all of that? So you're saying 900 megahertz?
There are 2 or 3 alarm manufacturers, one in the United States that makes a product that is military grade, if you will. It's in banks. If you go into a bank, you'll see their name on their keypad. But we use it in residential homes too because it's just an alarm panel, but it communicates off of 900 megahertz. Not 433. You need to stay away from that because in that frequency range, there are so many devices from a garage door to a police radio scanner, all jammed in on that frequency. So just stay away from that range and you'll be fine.
That's funny. You brought that up because I had a lady call and she told us that she could hear voices at night. And I think a radio station from the 1950s was playing old Frank Sinatra songs or something. And we never could figure out where she was getting it. Maybe it was the megahertz. I thought it was the megahertz in her head, but it could have been the megahertz of something else. So I never knew that. So there's radio signals that are powerful enough to kind of override those weaker ones.
And a lot of people get a little, and literally took about 8 years ago till I was sold on the wireless technology because I was old school. Everything needed a wire attached to it. However, the sensors today, if we put one on your door, the sensor will last about 6 years, the battery life.
Well, we had we had challenges initially because there was a lot of interference. Like we would put a wireless TV in a kitchen that it just wouldn't work because someone would turn on the vacuum cleaner next door and you couldn't see the picture, and so it was. It's had its challenges and it's had its, but like everything in this technology, it's you and I have been on the front lines and we've watched it actually just grow and get better and better and better every day, really. I want to talk a little bit. I've been fascinated about biometrics for a long time, and I know that most of your biometric experience and success is more in the commercial end of it, but in my world, the commercial end is where it starts.
Sure.
And then it moves to the residential eventually.
Yes.
And one of the things you were telling me is that in commercial right now, they have a way of being able to read body temperatures or read for fever.
That is a relatively new technology that is available because of the issue with COVID-19. Many manufacturers have come out with a product, camera-wise, that can actually use their thermal imaging technology to read body temperature of individuals relatively quickly and fairly accurately. And there's also the same thing you go up and swipe your key card with. You can actually put your wrist up against and it can read your temperature and it can pass fail. And I would see a lot of those things going into school systems pretty soon.
And so you were saying to me that at this point they would read up to 20 people at a time. There's some number,
Some of them can
a little
do
bit
that.
of a limitation.
You got to be very careful whenever you're reading someone's body temperature. And again, like we discussed a little bit ago, is that a medical examination?
Is it a HIPAA issue?
Right.
Or is it, yeah. No, I can see a whole lot of a target-rich environment for an attorney, for sure.
But to make biometrics even simpler, your cell phone right here, you can walk up to your house and it knows it's called geofencing. And the nice thing about it, and some people say, I don't even know I could do that. But if they have an alarm panel with us right now and they don't know about it, they want geofencing. If they drive up, this picks up their phone within, let's say, 1,500 feet. The lights come on automatically if they want that capability.
Wow. I had never heard of that. Geofencing.
Geofencing, yes.
And it's specifically for a phone? Excuse me.
It's just the technology that is using the alarm system as the mothership for your home automation, let's say. So we take the alarm panel and we now make it part of your HVAC control, your thermostats. We make it part of your lighting controls. So there's many different things that technology is driving us and the alarm industry to be a part of now.
So it sounds like you could preset everything on your phone. When you drive up, the lights come on, the air comes on, the the motor on the hot tub comes on.
There will be someone driving down I-30 at 85 miles an hour adjusting their ceiling fan, and they will likely be in an accident.
Man, I'm sorry. I've got a little frogginess in my throat. I'm gonna just do a quick spot here. Imagine this, a totally customized, organized, and beautiful master closet. Imagine a pantry designed specifically for your storage needs, an office that fits right into a perfect space, a garage that you can actually park your car and find your tools. Imagine your home totally organized. Well, it's time to turn your imagination into reality and call my friends at Closets by Design, DFW. For over 20 years, Closets by Design has been making dreams come true for North Texas homeowners every single day. Backed by a sales force of over 30 experienced designers, Closets by Design builds all of their cabinets locally, supporting our community. Go to dallas.closetsbydesign.com and check out the amazing specials or give them a call at 972-361-0010. That's 972-361-0010. Closets by Design.
I want that Brio collection. I'm serious. It's pretty good.
No, they're awesome. They do some beautiful, beautiful work, and they do home offices and garages and closets. They're an amazing company. We're very, very fortunate to have them as one of our sponsors. We really do appreciate them. So the biometrics thing, I didn't even know what biometrics meant till a few years ago when I had to do a thumb.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know what it was on a house. I'd never seen it. Of course, this was
Sure.
a really expensive home and very well-known people, so they had this. Is that becoming a lot more mainstream in residential?
Yes, it is. For door entries, yes, it is. People want to go up and just lock in a friend's or neighbor's fingerprint to give them permission, allow them to come through the door. Yeah, they can.
I mean, you can do it on your cell phone, so why not on the front door? But you still like
I'm old school.
that old bolt. You still go, biometrics is okay, but I want to know I can turn that bolt and make sure that sucker's locked.
We live in North Texas. The foundations move quite a bit. The door
Yeah.
frames move a little bit.
Yeah.
All it takes is those four AA batteries not to have enough push and that door not to be aligned with the frame, and your door is not locked.
Right,
And
right, right.
And you drove away from a
And
house.
that happens to the best of us.
So, given that technology aside, I stay old school and I like to lock my house, period.
One of the things that I was curious about, I wanted to talk about today was the second floors on houses. Is that a big concern for people? Higher than the first floor for people actually trying to break into a home? Or is that all just TV?
Well, given the fact in 1989, I literally had to grab a guy on our balcony who was trying to get in our house.
Really?
Yeah. And in 1989, about 2 weeks before I got married, a guy was on our balcony. I don't know what he was doing, but something woke me up. And I went out, and I didn't have time to do anything but go out, open a door, and try and grab him. Grabbed his pant leg, and he was up on the roof, and he was gone.
Wow.
About 2 years later, I did a crime watch in that subdivision, and a mother came up to me and said, "I want to let you know that that was my son."
Really? Really?
Yeah.
So is a lot of this local people?
No. Let's go back to the second floor. If you have access to that window, do what you can to protect that glass, especially if you have a child in that room. Put a glass break sensor. The moment the glass is struck, the glass break sensor will trip. It'll wake the people in the next adjacent room.
Right, right.
That's the way I would view it. And for the cost of it, it's worth it.
So I guess a good idea would be maybe to go and just maybe walk around the outside of the house, look at it, say, what's the most vulnerable point of this house? Where do I need to focus my most energy or my security dollars?
We want to do all the doors, period. And now we're doing even the garage doors, bringing them in the loop. And they have a separate timer, but we're securing most people don't secure their overhead garage doors. We want to do that now because a lot of personal things in there, even though kids might want to break in there. And the best another security tip I can give you, the cord that hangs down over every garage door, cut that cord immediately, because when the garage door is shut, kids can lean into the garage door, get a coat hanger up there, twist it, pull it, and unlock the garage door, and they're in.
So many years ago, and we did a remodel on a house.
All right.
And the client was a doctor. And so a lot of times she got in late. And she, all of a sudden, I was getting phone calls daily from her going, "You forgot to close the garage door." I did not forget to close the garage door. And she was not being nice like I am about it. She was very angry.
Sure.
She was calling me names that, well, we won't go into that
I
because
understand.
it still hurts my feelings. And I'm not really stupid.
Right.
And so anyway, so this went on for 2 or 3 days, and we could not figure out what was going on. So the superintendent decided one day to park out in front of the house, shut the job down, shut the garage door. He parks in front of the house, and about 10, 15 minutes later, the garage door goes up.
Yep.
And he looks over across the street, and it was the guy that was coming home at the same time,
Same frequency.
hit the frequency, and it raised up her garage door. And that solved the case. But garage door electric or garage door openers, remote openers, have always been very vulnerable to this.
Yeah, and one reason why we want to contact the overhead garage door, it'll let us know on our phones that our garage door is open.
Right.
So if we're down the road, it'll tell us that the garage door has been left open.
So it sounds like a lot of this has gone to just getting the alert that something's happened, whether it's the front door opening, the garage door opening, a window opening. You can have all of this just on your phone.
And we're minimizing now the biggest problem with police departments running around with their head cut off, chasing false alarms, integrating the cameras in with the alarm. We're letting the customer know, is that a real alarm? And they can peek in and actually see what's going on.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's fascinating because one of the first things I tell our homeowners that have alarm systems, if they're having to depend on me or my people to come and go, is that the first people we will meet is the police department.
Yes.
And the second people will be the fire department.
Exactly. We
get to know them all eventually.
Sure.
But, we all become friends. Let's talk quickly about safe rooms. Again, on this same theme of people's security right now with all these uprisings and all this unsettlements, or whatever you want to call it. Safe rooms, I've done a few of them where we just modified closets. Do you do a lot of safe, or have a call for a lot of safe rooms, or what would you suggest? If I'm doing a safe room, if someone says, Alex, I want to turn my master closet into also a safe room, what would you suggest that I advise, or what would you advise them, because I'd call you, to put in that safe room technology-wise? In other words, I shut the door to the safe room, I secure it, but then I've got to be able to call out and call for help.
Silent duress button.
A what?
It's simply a silent duress button.
A silent duress button.
Yeah, it can be wireless. Mm-hmm. You can have that on.
Just like the help I've fallen button.
That's exactly right.
Very
And
interesting.
the range on those are phenomenal.
So they can't just cut all the wires to the house or turn the power off?
We communicate. I'm glad you brought that up. We communicate primarily over cellular lines. Mm-hmm. We don't do the old telephone anymore.
So they can't just snip the wires and it all goes dead?
The alarm equipment we use can communicate a signal out that distress has been done to the panel itself so quick that we're going to get the signal.
Wow.
And again, we don't install. When it comes right down to it's the equipment you use that justifies the cost you're investing.
This is fascinating, and I think we could go all day on this stuff. There's still things that I haven't touched on. I've got about another 2 minutes with you.
Sure.
I want to talk about barriers on the outside. Now, I know you deal with the electronic part of it, but it all ties in together at some point.
Right.
How do I enhance? So that story that's been in the news lately about the protesters kicking in the iron gates and going into the private street and all of that mess. What could they do to enhance that barrier electronically? In other words, I know we've got the cameras, but does it all come down to sort of the same thing where it alerts somebody that the gate's been damaged? Or
You just answered it. The cameras are now smart. The cameras now have the ability through metadata to determine that a person has just breached the property and send you a push notification to your phone.
And the police.
It can bring them in a loop too. Mm-hmm. So the cameras are now a motion detector. The cameras are now smart.
That's not just a camera anymore.
Yeah. And I got about 30 seconds, but let me tell you where the cameras are now. They have enough ability to tell and discern between an umbrella and an AR-15. And we did a demonstration at a church and at a school. Wherever a person got out with an umbrella, nothing happened. Person got out with an AR-15, the camera recognized the gun, locked all the doors down.
Wow.
That's where we're at.
Are they using that in schools now?
It's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, how fascinating. What a fascinating subject.
It's growing daily.
The technology is just amazing. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for your time.
Dropping everything you were doing and running in here today. I kind of called you at the last minute. I'm so glad I did. It's been a very interesting discussion, and I think very helpful. So if you decide that if you're in the Dallas area and you need questions or you need a new security system, try Dallas Security Systems. Give them a call. We've had their website up here. Contact them. Jimmy Smith, we really, really appreciate you being here today.
Appreciate it.
Next week, we're going to talk a little air conditioning. I know every time it gets hot and we're going to talk air conditioning, it cools down for some reason. We've had kind of a cool summer, but we're going to talk about how not to shop for air conditioning with Steve Lawton next week. I want to thank Ziggy Becker, our engineer, for taking care of us today. Always the man. He hadn't even had to throw anything at me today, which has been really nice. I want to thank On Air Media for the fantastic work that they do producing this show. And also, of course, our guest, Jimmy Smith with Dallas Security Systems. You, our audience, thank you so much. And keep those emails coming in. Keep those kind words coming in. I really do appreciate it. Follow us on Facebook also, and also check out our YouTube channel where you can see these shows. And of course, our podcast. Our podcast is growing. Our audience is growing. Follow us, like us, say really nice things, and I'll send you a personal note. I do appreciate it. Until next week, this is Alex Guthrie signing off. I'll see you in a week.
The views and opinions of this program are for educational and entertainment purposes only and are not intended to replace the recommendations of a hired professional. You can catch Remodel Revolution anytime. Follow the show on the website, remodelrevolutionradio.com, or on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, using the handle at Remodel Revolution Radio. You can always listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn, and watch the show anytime on YouTube.